it's Deborah from the attic, and today I'm going to show you a couple of ways of using Kraft Tex to make a journal cover. You might have seen a previous video I made using Kraft Tex to make embossed covers. I'll provide a link up there. Now I'm going to show you a different way, two different ways that you could use die cutting to create a journal. Kraft Tex is one of my favourite products. I've used it an awful lot in previous videos, and the nice people who make Kraft Tex, C&T Publishing, sent me 3 different colours to work with recently. So today I'm going to be working with the linen, and this is hand dyed and pre-washed, and I want to unroll this and show you a little bit of the texture, because although this looks and acts like leather, it's actually paper based. You can cut this, stamp it, poke holes in it, emboss it, paint it, and today I'm going to show you that you can die cut it as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and if you want links to where you can find Kraft Tex, look below the video and I'll provide some links for you there. I have measured and cut down 2 pieces of Kraft Tex. The size that you use will depend completely on the size of journal cover that you want to make. These pieces are 11.5 centimetres by 18 centimetres, and that's because that's the size that I make frequently. It's a size I'm familiar and comfortable with, and it makes a beautiful little journal that just hugs your hand. In addition to my 2 pieces of Kraft Tex, I will be using these dies. These are Sizzix Thinlits. They're from Tim Holtz Alterations, and they're called Wildflowers No. 2. The number on the top is 661808. The reason that I'm using these is partly because they're what I have in my stash, because I always try and encourage you to use what you have. If you have anything similar to this, absolutely brilliant, just use that. The other reason is because these are very thin dies, and they're a very good test for this material, and they will give a good block image. Now by that I mean they're not so detailed that when I stamp out with them you won't be able to tell what the image is. When I die cut using these, not stamp, when I die cut using these, you will see a finished recognisable wildflower. Sometimes when I've been experimenting and I've tried other dyes, for example word dyes, it just doesn't work. It needs to be something that will give you a solid image. There are both tall and short dies in this set, and I'm going to use 2 of the shorter dies. The reason for that is because I don't want long dies that will go off the end of my cover edges. I'm happy with the positions of those, so I'm going to keep them in place using a little washi tape. I've run them through my die cutting machine, and now I'm going to pop them out. Reuse washi tape. If you manage to peel it away cleanly and you don't roll it up or rip it, what I do is I stick it on the top of my die cutting machine like this, as you can see here, and I reuse those bits. They can be reused many times. That's a very thin die, and yet it's cut out beautifully. I'm going to pop this out, and I'm going to be careful not to rip the really tiny little bits, because I'm going to use this in my second way for how to use die cuts to make journal covers. That's the first piece released, and I'm going to reserve this piece for my next project. And it's important not to rip either this or this, so when you run it through the machine it's always a good idea to check on the reverse, and if you can see the outline of where the cutter's gone, you know it's probably okay to take this piece off. If you don't see that, pop it through your machine again with maybe a piece of paper on top to act as a shim. And this is what I mean about making sure that whatever dye you use, it gives you a solid image. This is our basic cover, ready to go. I'm going to work on a little piece of scrap white paper, but it gives me a chance to say to you that there are many other colours of Kraft Tex, and in the information that's provided with each roll you can see the different colours and how they're used in some of those projects, and they have all of these designer colours now, so you can mix and match these sorts of projects exactly as you want. So if you had some white Kraft Tex, this is how these would look on white. I've got some blue, some denim here, which is just a beautiful colour, and I will be doing a project using some denim Kraft Tex in a future video. But if you wanted to put this onto blue, this is how it would look. I mean, that's rather pretty, isn't it? But for this project, I quite like the subtlety of putting it onto the same colour. And I also want to assume that you're only working with one colour of Kraft Tex, and I want to give you a way that you can get the most out of it. I'm going to glue this onto this piece, and to do that I'm going to use a paste that I use a lot and I really like. It's called Yes Paste. It's acid free, and this is a massive jar. It comes in, I think this is a pint, and it comes like this. It's pretty solid, but when you apply it, it goes very liquidy. But what it doesn't do is create globs of glue. It's ideal for gluing fabric onto Kraft Tex as well. You apply it with a card. You can apply it with a brush, but a card is much easier to wash off afterwards and to keep clean. I'm going to apply it really lightly because I don't particularly want it to soak into those little areas where it can get caught up on the cut spaces in the flower. And I'm not going to go right to the edge because I'm going to be sewing around the edge, and I don't want my sewing machine needle to be pressing down through glue unless I can avoid it. You don't need an awful lot of this stuff either. I've probably been a bit over generous with it because I want to make sure it goes into all the little nooks and crannies of all those tiny little pieces of the die cut. And the reason that I said the white paper was a sort of scrappy piece is because I want to lift it off there and I'll leave. You can see maybe how much glue has popped through. This is a piece that I want to glue my top piece onto. Even though you will have cut your pieces to exactly the same size, don't be worried if the top piece is looking bigger than the piece underneath. It's because it's been through your die cut machine and it's got a little bit squished and it goes a little tiny bit bigger. Because Kraft Tex is an amazing material, you can also dab away where the glue is. So this is just a wet wipe, and I'm pressing down and removing the glue at the same time. You can put Kraft Tex in your washing machine. You can run it through a cycle and you still won't kill it. I'm going to use another piece of scrap paper. I'm going to weight it down, probably use that pot again actually, and I'm going to give it a little bit of time to stick down properly. While that other piece is drying, let's have a look at how we're going to use the little die cuts that were left over. This is another piece of Kraft Tex in linen, and I've cut it down to be around about the same size as the other one. I want to add these to the front cover. They're going to look something like this. I just need to decide exactly where I want to put them. This is going to be a little journal, so that means I know that I need to find my centre point and then measure out from there where the holes will go that will hold my signature. To show you what I mean, this is a journal from the project that I referenced earlier and provided the link to, and in that video I show you how to sew in all of these signatures, and there are 4 signatures in this little book that was made using Kraft Tex again with a rather neat technique, which again is in the earlier video. And I know, because I have a template, because I make quite a few of these, I know where I need to position my holes. So if you imagine that this is stretched out like that, you need to measure from the center point out, and you need to measure for however many signatures you want to have in your journal. This is a template that I've made for myself and I use it quite frequently. So I can use this to line up where all of the holes will go, and actually I'm going to use a Sharpie pen to show me where those holes will be. That's where the holes will be, and so to make sure that I find the centre point of my front page, I'm just going to fold this on that first line of holes, and that tells me that is my front page, or in the example earlier, that is my front page. I know there's going to be about 1 inch for the signatures, and then obviously I have my back page as well. But this is a really useful, quick way just to make sure that you do get your anything that you want to stick on your front cover roughly centred. These are going to sit around about here. So I'm going to get some glue. I'm not going to use my paste glue because I don't need to. I'm just going to use some acrylic cosmic shimmer glue, and I'm going to glue those down. This is how it looks when the glue dries, and it's very nice. It makes it look like there's a relief pattern in the cover. So that's that one. And then this one where we die cut and then stuck the die cuts onto another sheet underneath. This is how it looks. A couple of tips, things that I have learned, is if you find that the glue hasn't stuck everything down, it'll depend on how detailed your die cut is. These are very, very detailed. And so where I found little bits were popping up, I just went underneath and added an extra little bit of glue and then let that dry. Don't worry about any glue sort of seeping out from underneath it, because if you then take your pokey tool, you can just very gently stroke it away and then there's no evidence left of any glue in there. This one I'm going to sew around the outside, and I'm just going to have the other piece of Kraft Tex as the inside of this journal. With this one I'm going to glue a piece of fabric to the inside of my journal. I'm going to use my paste, the Yes paste that I showed you before, to do that, and then I'll take it to my sewing machine and I'll sew around the outside, and then I'll trim it down with zigzag scissors. So I'm going to do that sewing off camera, and I'll bring them both back and show you how they look when I've finished. The sewing is finished, and maybe you can see just a little thin line of stitching around the outside edge, as close as I can get it to the edge, and then inside some nice fabric, and I can make that up into a little booklet. And this one is really good for showing you that you can stitch through 2 layers of Kraft Tex. Just make sure you give your needle time to go up and down, don't rush it, just take it nice and slowly. And then that has got a beautiful cover on the inside as well, and I can make that into a little journal. Here is one of the finished journals. This is the one where we stuck the die cut on the front using the same colour of Kraft Tex. I've sewn in the 4 signatures. I've added a little bit of word stamping on the top there. On the inside we've got a really nice jolly fabric and 4 signatures. So there's plenty of space to write things down in this journal, and it's a really lovely size. This is a size that I use myself most frequently. It's the size that I throw in my handbag if I'm going anywhere. If you want to know how to make this little journal, it's also covered in the video I mentioned earlier on. This one I have yet to sew the signatures in, but I've prepared the holes and I'll be sewing that in next. I hope you found that useful and it gave you some ideas for how you can use Kraft Tex. Remember, it comes in all kinds of different colours, and it's a really wonderful versatile medium for people who make journals because it's such a quick way to make a cover. I'll provide some links below the video if you want to see where you can go and find Kraft Tex for yourself. And for now I'm going to say thank you very much for your time, thank you for watching. Until we meet again, stay safe and take care.